I don't think there's anybody more committed to Edmonton than Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Okay? I expect the next contract that Connor McDavid signs to be a 7-year extension. And I remind your viewers that that's the max term length carrying forward here with the little adjustment made to the CBA, right? Starting in 27, it will be a 7-year extension. So you know what? You empower the players to be involved in key decisions. That's the way of the future. It's already been occurring for years in the NBA. You know, Josh Allen, was he part of the selection process with the coach, with Terry Bagula, with the Buffalo Bills? I bet you he was. And when you empower the players, I think you end up getting greater conviction from them. And I've actually had this debate, an animated discussion with Mike Babcock, because I've known Mike since, he coached the Lethbridge Pronghorns to a national championship back in 1993-94. And he's a member of the triple, gold club, the only coach to ever do that. But the greatest coaching job he ever did is winning it at that school. They don't even have a hockey program anymore. I mean, that's like winning an NCAA football title at Savannah State, right? Like and knocking off of Georgia and Alabama. So I just, the players have never been a bigger part of the partnership in the league than now. And, I'm going to guess here, if I'm sitting there telling you that from ownership to management to the players, everybody's 100% on board with Mike Babcock, you probably know the level of engagement with the Oilers top players.
For months, fans around the NHL have been asking the same question. Not whether Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey. That debate ended a long time ago. The real question has been whether there was any chance he might eventually leave Edmonton. In Colorado, Montreal, New York, and pretty much every major hockey market, people have been building trade packages in their heads. Some dreamed about blockbuster offers. Others wondered if contract uncertainty could eventually force the Oilers into a difficult decision. It became one of those conversations that never really goes away. But if the latest information coming out of Edmonton is accurate, those trade fantasies are about to come crashing down. Because according to one of the people closest to the organization, Connor McDavid is not preparing an exit strategy. In fact, all signs point toward the exact opposite. Bob Stauffer recently appeared on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and offered one of the strongest indications yet about where this situation is heading. When discussing McDavid's future, Stauffer didn't leave much room for speculation. His expectation is that McDavid's next contract will be a full 7-year extension. Not 3 years, not 4 years, not a shorter deal designed to keep options open. 7 years, the maximum term available under the current collective bargaining agreement. And when someone as connected to the Oilers organization as Stauffer makes a statement that's specific, people tend to pay attention. Now think about what that would mean. McDavid is already under one of the most team-friendly superstar contracts hockey has seen in recent years. His current deal carries a $12.5 million cap hit, a number that looks smaller every season as salaries continue to rise across the league. The next contract won't look like that. This isn't the Connor McDavid who signed his previous extension. This is a player who has continued to strengthen his case as the most dominant talent in the sport. This is a player with multiple MVP awards, multiple scoring titles, and a 5th Ted Lindsay Award now sitting on his resume. There isn't another player in hockey who drives success the way McDavid does. And when the time comes for a new contract, the Oilers know exactly what they are paying for. They're paying for the face of the franchise. They're paying for the player who gives them a chance to compete every season. They're paying for the biggest reason Edmonton remains relevant in every Stanley Cup conversation. A 7-year commitment would send a message that goes far beyond dollars and cents. It would tell the rest of the NHL that McDavid sees his future in Edmonton. And for rival fan bases, hoping something might eventually change, that's a difficult reality to accept. Colorado fans understand this especially well. The Avalanche remain one of the league's premier organizations, but every fan base dreams about adding a generational player. Whenever uncertainty surrounds a superstar, those dreams start growing. Suddenly social media fills with trade proposals. Salary cap experts begin creating hypothetical scenarios. fans convince themselves that maybe, just maybe, something impossible could become possible. The problem is that sometimes reality arrives and shuts the door. And that's exactly what appears to be happening here. But the contract discussion isn't the only major story unfolding in Edmonton right now. There is another development that could play a significant role in shaping the franchise's future. The Oilers are widely expected to move forward with Mike Babcock as their next head coach. Even mentioning Babcock's name immediately creates debate. His track record is undeniable. He's won at the highest levels. He has coached championship teams. He has spent decades building one of the most accomplished resumes in hockey. But his reputation is also complicated. The criticism that followed him out of Toronto never fully disappeared. Questions about player relationships, communication style, and leadership methods have remained attached to every conversation involving his potential return to coaching. That's why many people assumed player reaction would become the biggest obstacle if Edmonton seriously pursued him. Yet, according to Stauffer, the situation may be very different from what outsiders imagine. His comments suggested that players have not been excluded from the process. In fact, he described an environment where player input matters. And honestly, that reflects a larger trend happening throughout professional sports. Organizations increasingly understand that franchise players aren't just athletes. They're partners in building a winning culture. Whether it's hockey, football, basketball, or baseball, elite players often have influence over major decisions. Not necessarily final authority, but influence. Enough influence that their opinions matter when important choices are being made. Stauffer even referenced how other leagues operate, pointing to the idea that superstar players frequently have a voice in organizational direction. If that's happening in Edmonton, it changes how people view the Babcock situation. Because the biggest concern was never whether management liked him. The biggest concern was whether the locker room would support him. And if players such as McDavid and Draisaitl were involved in discussions, or at the very least comfortable with the direction being taken, then the narrative changes considerably. It doesn't erase the concerns surrounding Babcock. Those questions will still exist. People will continue debating whether his coaching style fits today's NHL. Only time will provide those answers. But player support creates a completely different starting point than player resistance. That distinction matters. Stauffer went even further, suggesting there is significant alignment throughout the organization. Ownership, management, players, everyone moving in the same direction. Whether that assessment proves entirely accurate remains to be seen, but it offers insight into how Edmonton views itself heading into next season. And that's where these two stories begin connecting. At first glance, McDavid's contract future and the coaching search seem unrelated. In reality, they may be part of the same message. The Oilers are trying to create stability. They're trying to show their superstar players that this organization has a plan, a long-term vision, a commitment to competing, a commitment to winning, a commitment to keeping their championship window open. Because retaining generational talent isn't just about money. It's about trust. Players stay where they believe they can succeed. They stay where they believe leadership is aligned. They stay where they believe the future is worth investing in. Everything currently coming out of Edmonton suggests the organization is working hard to create exactly that environment. And then there's Draisaitl. Whenever McDavid's future becomes a topic, Draisaitl inevitably enters the conversation. The two stars have become linked in the minds of hockey fans everywhere. Their careers have developed side by side. Their success has been intertwined, and their commitment to Edmonton often gets discussed together. Stauffer specifically mentioned both players when talking about long-term belief in the organization. That's important, because maintaining one superstar is valuable. Maintaining two franchise-defining players is how championship windows stay open for years. The message being communicated right now is simple. The Oilers don't see this era ending anytime soon. Neither do the players at the center of it. For fans around the league who spent months imagining a future where McDavid eventually became available, this latest information feels like the clearest signal yet. a 7-year extension, a coaching hire reportedly supported throughout the organization, a front office emphasizing player involvement, a franchise focused on stability rather than uncertainty. Those are not the signs of a superstar preparing to leave. Those are the signs of a superstar planting roots. Of course, Edmonton still faces major challenges. Every contender does. Salary cap decisions will have to be made. Roster improvements will be necessary. Questions surrounding coaching and team construction won't disappear overnight. None of that changes, but the biggest question hanging over the franchise appears to be moving toward an answer. Is Connor McDavid staying? If the people closest to the situation are correct, the answer isn't just yes. It's yes for a very long time. And if that happens, every trade fantasy across the NHL can finally be put to rest. Because Connor McDavid won't be looking for a new destination. He'll be helping build one.